We now move to our first panel discussion titled Asian Perspectives on Global Security Challenges. As the Indo-Pacific becomes a central arena of both strategic competition and cooperation, understanding how Asian nations perceive and address global security challenges is more important than ever. This panel will explore how shared democratic values and regional partnerships can support stability, deter aggression, and foster resilience amid increasing geopolitical uncertainty. Our panelists this morning are Mr. Taro Kono, member of the House of Representatives, Japan; Mr. Holmes Liao, senior advisor to the Taiwan Space Agency; General Yoshihide Yoshida, former Chief of Staff, Japan Joint Staff. The session will be moderated by Mr. Josh Logan, lead global security analyst at the Washington Post Intelligence. Please join me in welcoming our speakers to the stage.
My name is Josh Rogan. I'm with the Washington Post. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored and pleasured to be a part of this important conference. As I was listening to Evelyn quote Senator John McCain, I was reminded of another John McCain quote that I feel is very relevant for today's discussion. Senator McCain often liked to quote Chairman Mao. And Jack knows what's coming. Senator McCain would always say, as Chairman Mao would say, it's always darkest before it goes completely black. Now, what's funny about that is that Chairman Mao never said that. And Senator McCain knew that Chairman Mao never said that. And John McCain would never really quote Chairman Mao, but he loved to misquote Chairman Mao. But the point of the joke was that even when it looks bleak, actually, the darkness comes before the dawn. And I think that speaks perfectly to the international situation that we see today. We're living through a moment of great uncertainty, unpredictability, and change. We have a global security environment under strain on multiple fronts. Major power competition with China, hot wars in Europe and the Middle East, rising pressure on Taiwan, and the weaponization of economics, technology, energy, space, and information. None of these challenges exist in isolation. They're all connected, and miscalculation can be disastrous. That's why the US-Japan relationship matters so profoundly right now. It's a stabilizing anchor in the international system. When Washington and Tokyo work together, that gives a reassurance to the region and the world. And when they don't, that uncertainty can have drastic consequences. This panel is about how Asia sees that strategic environment, and we could not have a better panel to talk to today. I encourage you all to put in your earpieces. Some of this will be in English, and some of this will be in Japanese, so please do that now. I'm very happy to have an excellent panel. Kono Taro is one of Japan's most consequential political figures, a former foreign minister, defense minister, digital minister. Have I missed any? That's all of them? And who has consistently pushed Japan to think more realistically about security and modernize its strategic posture. General Yoshida was chief of staff of Japan's joint staff, and he brings an operator's clarity to these conversations. And Holmes Liao brings an expert technical perspective and an on-the-ground perspective from Taiwan. So let me start by asking each of you an opening question, and we'll go from this side to that side, starting with you, Kono-san. For decades, the US alliances in Asia were built around predictability, reassurance, but today, that predictability and reassurance is under question. Uncertainty is a constant feature. From your perspective, how should Asian democracies adapt? How should they cope with and manage and navigate this new reality in the US presence in East Asia? And thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning. This is Maverick speaking. Well, during the Trump won, yes, President Trump said whatever he wanted to say, but there are people around him like General Mattis, Mark Esper, Mike Pompeo, H.R. McMaster, who could say, no, Mr. President. And then the U.S. would sort of stay on the course. But it seems to me during the Trump too, there's nobody who could say no to the president and the Congress. I'm very disappointed that Congress is not taking necessary action to reassure allies that U.S. would stay on the course. So we are hoping the United States democracy will function as a democratic country. That would give us a lot more reassurance. I think between military to military, I think the bilateral relationship is probably the best in history. But even they are wondering, what about Tokyo-Washington relationship? Anything the president said would derail everything we have prepared. And we should have been sitting down with US, Japan, Europe, and other like-minded countries to coordinate the strategy vis-a-vis China, their military expansion or their excess capacity in industry. And then we should have been coordinating strategy. But President Trump is shooting allies from behind, and we have no coordination of strategy, and China could take on one by one. I think that's what's happening. I just got back from Malaysia, Singapore, and the ASEAN country, I think they need to keep good relationship with the United States. So on the surface, they will smile at Washington, but in the shadow, they are wondering what the hell's going on, and they are getting closer to China. In order to survive, I think that's what they have to do. So into the near future, I think this unpredictability of the United States would hurt the relationship between the like-minded country and the global South, and that's going to be a big deficit for the West. And I think Japan, Europe, Canada, Australia, Korea, other like-minded countries really need to start talking about how we can coordinate our strategy vis-a-vis US, vis-a-vis China. And
interesting.
I'm very pessimistic.
Interesting. Well, before I move on, let me just press you a little bit on that. Do you think the Japanese government has done how would you describe the current Japanese government's approach toward dealing with that Trump dynamic in the second term? What's good about it, and what more can be done, or what different should be done in your view to setting aside the hedging and the relations with Asia, just dealing with Washington-Tokyo relations?
I think Ishiba-san and Takaichi-san have been doing whatever they could do, except playing golf with them. I don't know if Takaichi-san plays golf.
She plays drums.
Oh, well, yeah. I don't think that President Trump played drums. So, but I think they are trying the best to create a personal relationship with President Trump, and I think that matters most.
Thank you. Actually, let me skip over and ask Yoshida-san, because we're talking about security cooperation. It does seem that the U.S.-Japan relationship is operating on two different tracks. The security relations are actually, at the working level, as Kono said, very good. But at the political level, or even at the economic level, very volatile. Can you talk about the security side of the relationship? What progress do you see? What's going well? What more can Washington do? And what more can Tokyo do?
Thank you very much. First of all, will you allow me speaking in Japanese? Because Josh's question is so excellent, but difficult to answer. So from now on, I'll speak in Japanese.
First of all, Josh's first question, what I feel about that is the following. The United States is such that the U.S. was a fixed entity for alliance countries, but it's now becoming a variable very quickly. So the alliance countries' strategic approach would be, I believe, the following two. Firstly, within the alliance framework, the alliance countries' role to be expanded, should be expanded, and strategic autonomy to be strengthened. That's the first thing that can be done. Secondly, to expand the partnership of alliance countries during the Cold War, the order in the region was such that the United States was the United States was a hub, and it was a hub and spoke relationship. But presently, Japan, U.S. and Australia, Japan, U.S. and South Korea, or Japan, U.S., Australia, India, Japan, U.S., Australia, Philippines. Minilateral cooperation should be structured in a multi-layered framework, and that is what keeps the order in place of the region. So on our part, in the view of the political situation in the United States, minilateral cooperation should be advanced, with Japan playing a central and leadership role, and with agency. And lastly, the question that you raised, I believe that military relationship with the United States, through this relationship, what I feel is that in the U.S. military, there is no concept which is of constraint and deterrence. For each entity to play its role in order to maintain order, there is no change in that. And this mil-mil relationship must be strengthened even further because of the situation we are in. I believe this will be an anchor for the alliance. That is what I think. Thank you.
Before we move on, may I ask you a very quick follow-up question? You mentioned the minilateral structure. We all know for many years the strategy was to build small alliances in 2s and 3s and 4s. U.S., Japan, Korea, U.S., Japan, Philippines, et cetera, U.S., Japan, Australia. Is that still the strategy? Is the Trump administration continuing that approach as far as you can see? Is Japan continuing that approach? And what are the successes and challenges of that strategy?
First, the East Asia region, Indo-Pacific, strategic posture toward China is diverse. It depends on the country. In Europe, there is NATO. A collective defense structure of this nature to be created is difficult in this region. And so if that's the case, multilateral cooperation and accumulation of this would be important. And within this kind of cooperation, even without the United States, the multilateral cooperation, I think, can be formed. For example, when I was still in active service, Japan, Australia, and India, Indonesia. This kind of a quad is what I attempted to create. And the reason for this is that Southeast Asian countries are such that it's very difficult for them to choose either the United States or China. That would put them in a quandary. So even without the United States, middle power countries to strengthen alliance would become a major force. What we can do at the moment is accumulate a multilateral cooperation.
Understood. Thank you. Mr. Liao, let me ask you for the perspective from Taipei about the second Trump administration's Asia policy broadly. Thank you so much.
Yeah, as you said, a lot of things are unpredictable right now, and predictability used to be the bedrock of security framework around the world. But I would say let's not waste time and resources on trying to predict the unpredictable. One thing I do know, as I live in Taiwan, is that in the past, treating Taiwan's defense as a future contingency is no longer applicable. We are in it now, and Taiwan is the front line. And if that front line falls, Japan will be the front door, the contingency will be the front door of Japan. And Japan naturally will bear the brunt of the Chinese further aggression. Therefore, Mr. Shinzo Abe said it more than 10 years ago, and the current Prime Minister Takaichi said it materialized. And therefore, what happens is both Taiwan and Japan is a so-called ume kyodatai, sharing the same fate, same destiny as a community. Within that context, I would suggest and I would argue that we should hard code the technical aspect and build a framework that emphasize the interoperability, the common operating pictures, and so on and so forth. And rather than continuing to making rhetorics, let's make readiness front and center to deter Chinese aggression.
You're arguing for more cooperation between United States, Japan, and Taiwan together.
Yes.
And what is the obstacle to that?
Well, the obstacle is, of course, on the political perspective. As we all know, China has retaliated against Prime Minister Takaichi's statement. But I would say it's not the time to back down. China, well, let me paraphrase George Kennan's long telegram back in 1946. He said, Soviet Union is impervious to the logical reasoning, but it's very susceptible to the logical force. And China is the same. Back in 1958, the first Taiwan Strait crisis, President Truman sent the U.S. Seventh Fleet start cruising the Taiwan Strait, and therefore the Chinese communists backed down. And in 1996, the same thing happened again. China launched ballistic missile around Taiwan, and President Clinton dispatched 2 aircraft carrier battle groups in the region, and China backed down again. And of course, the time is different. China is rapidly expanding its arsenal, its weapon systems. But if we start retreating right now, politically, economically, or otherwise, then it will send a signal of weakness rather than we speak from the position of strength.
Excellent, thank you. Since you brought it up, this is a perfect introduction to talking about the current crisis in Japan-China relations and Washington's role. I just want to let the audience know that we will have time for questions and answers, so start thinking about your questions now, and we'll get there soon enough. But let me turn to you, Kono-san. There's a short-term implication and a long-term implication of the tensions and fallout of Prime Minister Takaichi's comments on Taiwan in front of the Diet. This week in Tokyo, many people have told me, well, she didn't really say anything new. And also this week, people have told me, well, the fact that she said it in that time and space was significant. And people have also told me the Japanese government underestimated the blowback, the retribution, the punishment. And now here we are. Is that correct? Do you agree with that? And does the current tension and Washington's response to the tension, which was to mostly pressure Japan, not China, what does that tell you about the current strategic situation?
Thank you. I don't think Takaichi-san said anything incorrect, but no previous prime minister said that in Parliament. So I'm not sure if that was appropriate or not. But the major issue is if U.S. has upper hand dealing with China, China wouldn't have treated Japan like they are doing right now. Between Trump and Xi Jinping meeting, I think Xi Jinping realized Trump is just a paper tiger, asking to buy rare earths, asking to sell soybean. So China think they don't need Japan card. And they wanted to show how much Taiwan is important to China, to their global audience. So that's what's happening. We have been reducing the reliance on China of rare earths, but it's not enough. So China's still the major trading partner. We import most from China, and I think China is the second biggest market for our export. So we cannot cut off their economic relationship for the future. What we can do is we continue to reduce the reliance on China. We continue to de-risk our relationship. We will try to create some industry where China is depending on us. We cannot, I think we just have to continue to look at China for the market for certain product, but I think we need to be careful about the further investment. So we really need to be careful with, dealing with China. But behind that, we really needed a good coordination strategy among the like-minded country, which we don't have. That's why we are suffering more than we should have been.
Interesting. There's two parts of that. There's the defense of Taiwan part, and then or the Taiwan contingency part, and then there's the critical minerals and rare earths part. Let me ask you, General Yoshida, about the defense to contingency of Taiwan part. My question is, what is Japan's role in that contingency? What do you think the capability of Japan is to participate in a Taiwan contingency? And how do you view the current efforts between the United States and Japan to prepare for that contingency, including by coordinating with Taiwan, which, as Ms. Holmes has already said, is a challenge?
First of all, as a premise, from a geopolitical standpoint, Taiwan and our countries, Nansei Islands, Southwest Islands, and the Philippine archipelago are such that it's in the first island chain, all on the first island chain. So it's in the same theater. So that is my thinking. And therefore, in the unlikely case that there is a contingency in Taiwan, whether that will spill over into a contingency for Japan cannot be excluded. That is what I think. And so to this, what is important is that to China, deterrence by corrective cost imposition, that is necessary. And for one thing, the United States and Taiwan, the relationship needs to be strengthened there. And also, in the same region, Japan, US, Philippines, in the same region, the relationship between these countries, I believe, to be strengthened is extremely important. What we are faced with in terms of challenge is that if I were to point this out, for China to unify Taiwan, there's a peaceful unification and there is a military unification, but in between that there is a gray zone, de facto or fait accompli near in China to control, the Coast Guards controlling sea control or engage in cyber control, influence operations to be conducted, and vis-a-vis Taiwan, they may try to change their policy or, depending on the situation, might change the government to pressure for that. Gray zone fait accompli is such that from the military standpoint, it's very hard for the United States and other outsiders to intervene. And so we in the region, as to what we should do, I believe Taiwan would be a case in point. But also in Japan, a whole of society resilience, how to strengthen that against cyber attacks or submarine cable attacks or space systems attack or destructive operations and attacks on that, and influence or sabotage. The whole of society resilience should be strengthened. And that is a measure that we should be taking first and foremost.
Thank you. I understand perfectly. Holmes, that speaks to your expertise directly. And for those of you who don't know, Holmes has been a leading thinker and writer about the need for Taiwan's defenses to be rethought, I think is fair to say, towards more survivability, more speed, more distributed systems, less traditional platforms. Is that fair to say that that's your view? And can you explain why that is so urgent and what are the obstacles to getting there?
It's a very, very good question. Taiwan's military historically has focused on land warfare. And to a certain extent, they may have learned the wrong lesson from Ukraine. When I say that is because the Ukraine theater is a land warfare. Two armies, they are bombarding one another or each other with artilleries, with tanks, drones, and so on. But Taiwan is an island defense. It's not. It's an island, and there's no the so-called Poland factor, right? Ukraine has more than 1,400 kilometers neighboring Poland, Hungary, Romania, and so on. But Taiwan does not border any other countries. So therefore, the pre-position ammunitions and get enough sufficient weapon system that can survive the first attack. And when push comes to shove, Taiwan should start counterattack, and that requires a whole different mindset of the military. Historically, Taiwan has not invested enough in space or electronic warfare, and these are the two enabling domain that must be addressed in order to fight off the Chinese military. China is called a near-peer adversary by the United States. What that means is it spans from space, land, maritime, and also the cyber, right? But Taiwan should not be stand aside and let Uncle Sam or let the JSDF take care of the situation. Taiwan, of course, has positive development in the last few years. Namely, started to lengthen the conscription period, and also start procuring a modern system. But I would also argue, in the past, the U.S. and Taiwan treated Taiwan's defense as like discrete weapon systems. That is not right. Everything should be integrated. So President Light a few months ago announced that Taiwan should build a so-called T-Dome. For namesake, it's after Israeli Iron Dome and the U.S. Golden Dome. For a T-Dome to work, lots of components, subsystems need to be integrated together, and that requires a whole different mindset than the conventional fighters, the tanks, artilleries, and so on. Everything has to come together so that Taiwan can not only catch the shooter, the arrows, but Taiwan should also have the capability to let the archer know that when the retaliation begins, they will be annihilated. And that is the capability that Taiwan needs to develop, and it needs to be done sooner rather than later.
Understood, thank you. Kono-san, you mentioned critical minerals, rare earths. Right now, Minister Koizumi is in Washington meeting with the Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of War, depending on your opinion. And before he did that, he stopped in Los Angeles and visited a drone factory, drone manufacturing. So there's a recognition here in Tokyo that Japan needs to work with the United States to develop more technology production, mineral refinement, component production. And we have many initiatives now in the Trump administration, to its credit, actually. The Development Finance Corporation, the Office of Strategic Capital, the Critical Minerals Agreement that President Trump struck with the Japanese government in October. How goes all of that? Do you see real progress? It seems to me that the problem is urgent, but the solutions are slow. Is that right? And what more can and should be done on both the technology and critical mineral front in order to close the gap?
Well, what I understand is rare earth is not rare, but we don't have a process to get it into product, and that would take time. So signing a document won't give us anything. We really have to set up a plant to produce rare earth product, and that would take some time. And what we are faced with is, like, if you look at the self-defense force has been has failed to recruit the necessary soldiers for the last several years. I mean, 2023, I think only 51% of target we could recruit. And it's going to be more difficult as depopulation progress, and self-defense force has to compete against the private sector. That's one. And we are supposed to increase the number. We are supposed to increase the defense budget to 2% of GDP, which almost everyone in the parliament agree, but we still don't have agreement how to finance it. I think LDP is the only political party that's saying we need to increase the tax to finance defense budget to make it feasible. And then we really need to change weapon system of self-defense force from the big grand one to something we learned from Ukraine. And that would take some time. So yes, we are faced with crisis and we are starting actions, but actually it will take some time that we need until we need what we supposed to. So we have to survive in the meantime.
Understood. General Yoshida, we're talking about the Japanese defense budget. Switching from a focus on readiness and operations to a focus on more procurement. If Kono-san is correct, and we don't have enough SDF personnel, does that mean we should just buy the unmanned systems because they don't need any personnel? Is that possible? Is that a good idea? And how do you see the defense budget increases progressing over the next 5 years? Do you think they're going to really happen? Do you think they'll be spent on things that are wise? What is your opinion?
Our government, NSS, NDS, Security 3 documents are thinking about revising this before the end of the year. And for myself, as for the defense innovation, the foremost item would be, to be a little abstract, the fourth industrial revolution, how that is to be introduced in war innovation. I believe this is a key point. The United States in 2016 took the third offset strategy, and AI using decision-making in the cognitive area, how to establish supremacy is what they're studying. And as to follow that, China, toward the latter 2010s, changed from information warfare to intelligentized warfare, and it talked about the evolution of this, and they are focusing on AI. Intelligentized warfare, how to win in that situation is what they're putting their resources into. And in the Ukraine war, which is underway at the moment, it's not just a matter of manufacturing drones, whether it's Russia or Ukraine. How to implement AIs is what they're thinking about. They are preparing themselves for the next war. They're trying to introduce the next generation items into the present warfare. And the AI centralized advanced technology, how we can introduce this into our defense is a key point. We are improving our defense capabilities, and the people say generals always prepare for the previous war. That is often said, and we are dragged down by the legacy course. But I feel that a focused investment on future course, I believe, would lead to future further deterrence strengthening, and we should focus exactly on this spot.
Excellent, thank you. I understand. Holmes, let me ask you to also respond to that idea, and let me add one more provocative additional question. Many in Washington have often talked about 2027 as the year that we should be prepared to defend Taiwan from a Chinese attack. Now it's 2026. We're pretty close. Do we still need to be prepared by 2027? Because that's 11 months from now. Or is that now, do we have a new date? Or how do you view that 2027 deadline?
In Taiwan, we are facing the threat of the Chinese aggression days in and days out. I will argue that war has started long ago. And it's not hot war, it's gray zone. It's gray zone operation in the information domain, around the water in Taiwan, and so on and so forth. The Chinese Communist Party is very good at manipulating, mind manipulation. That is probably not the right term, but what I'm trying to say is that
Information warfare.
Information warfare, but the FBI more than 20 years ago has already labeled the CCP as the perception management entity.
Cognitive warfare.
Right, that's the military term, but the FBI called them the perception
Interesting.
management. Yeah, right. But in any case,
TikTok, you're talking about TikTok. I'm addicted, yeah.
well, more than 20 years ago, there was no social media, right? So, but FBI had the foresight to be vigilant about the Chinese manipulation in the information domain. And it's not just the electronics. It started from the paper, the TVs, and all the other media that you can think of. And Russia has already done similar things to Ukraine, but also to the U.S. And I would say that what they are doing is more or less model after the Chinese. But in that regard, so back to your question about what about the war?
2027.
Yes, when the hot war will start. The Taiwan's military is very nervous. The J2, they're collecting intel every day, and they analyze, are there any new movement? And the J3 is still preparing, well, the maritime amphibious assault and so on, right? So all the joint command in Taiwan, they are preparing. The people, all right, that's the biggest unknown. The civilian defense exists on paper, even though President Lai has already instituted the so-called, the quote-unquote, whole of society resilience. But most of the people, including my neighbors, my friends, they feel powerless. They want to play a role into the civil defense and how to assist the military, but so far the vast majority of the people has not been incorporated into solidifying the whole of nation defense. And that is the biggest concern. So no matter when the first bullet is fired, I would say Taiwan needs to be more prepared. And so that brings back the question of back in April of last year, back then the Japan House of Representatives, Mrs. Takaichi, she visited Taiwan and proposed the idea of quasi-alliance, not unlike what General Yoshida just mentioned. Taiwan should, well, rather than provoking China in rhetorics, a lot of things can be done quietly, such as intelligence sharing, right? Such as maritime domain awareness. That requires space assets, airborne assets, common operating platforms, and so on and so forth. These are the things that can be done today, rather than waiting until the first bullet is fired. And I will argue that it's more urgent than ever.
Thank you. I remember when Admiral Paparo, the head of Indo-Pacific Command, gave an interview to the Washington Post, revealing the U.S. plan to defend Taiwan through a strategy called Hellscape. Essentially, thousands of drones in the Taiwan Strait to slow the Chinese invasion or break the blockade until the fleet can arrive. What do you think of that plan? Is that a good plan? Is that realistic? And how do you think that's a strategy that we can follow and depend on?
Right. It speaks volumes of the fact that the U.S. cares more and more about the peace and prosperity in the Western Pacific. The theater around Taiwan is different from Ukraine. Not just it's an island, but also the weather. Right. For instance, from October to March every year, when the monsoon wind starts blowing, the Beaufort scale 6 is the minimum. Right. And under that weather, there's no way for the drones to take off. It's totally unlike the breeze in the Black Sea. And similarly, under that weather, the USV, the unmanned surface vehicles, will be very hard to maneuver. I'm not saying that the hellscape is unachievable. It is, but new technologies need to be developed to stabilize the operations and the control of those unmanned systems before hellscape becomes a reality.
So not by 2027, probably.
I haven't seen the technology yet. Maybe it's on the drawing board. Yeah.
Got it. Let me ask one final question for everybody, and let me step back and take a look at the Trump administration's overall description of its international strategy, as described in the National Security Strategy that was released recently. It calls it the new Monroe Doctrine, and President Trump calls this the Donroe Doctrine. And the basic idea is that the United States has dominance over the Western Hemisphere and its near abroad, and then by extrapolation, yields some influence in Asia and Europe to China and Russia to have influence over their near abroad. And of course, this has nothing to do with James Monroe. And James Monroe must be turning in his grave right now. But setting that aside, this is pretty much what we're to understand the Trump administration foreign policy is. And the first example, of course, was the attack on Venezuela. And I'm very curious, I'm sure many people in this room are very curious, how is both that strategy of the Donroe Doctrine and the attack on Venezuela, which is in some way, some people say it increases deterrence against China because now they got to be scared that Trump can attack anyone at any time, or some people says it decreases the deterrence on China because now the norm of not arresting foreign heads of state and taking them away in the middle of the night is broken. Which one is right? What do you think? Let me start with you, Kono-san. Sorry, it's a very many-part question, but take as much time as you need.
I guess now all the dictators or head of a drug cartel have to shave, get a haircut, buy nice-looking pajama before they go to bed.
Clean underwear.
Right.
They have to wear clean underwear.
So, well, whatever papers that come out from Washington, I think it doesn't mean much because one person could change his mind and everything changes. And that's possible in Washington today. There's no check and balance. So yes, new document came out, but how credible that is, I think that's the question. And unless President Trump listened to his cabinet or listen to his advisors and take good advice and act on it, otherwise it just, I don't know, it's just a one-man play. So strategy doesn't mean much. And that's why China is increasing its influence. I mean, China doesn't have to do anything. U.S. just losing its influence in Asia or Middle East. And that's why we, like-minded country, our ally, are suffering. And we hope somehow United States would correct its governance near future so that we can push back China.
Maybe not near future.
Well,
yeah.
November, hopefully.
Maybe. General Yoshida, same question.
The United States will change from a global hegemony to a regional hegemony, and there'll be an acceleration of this. And at the same time, what is happening is that China's grand strategy is changing from regional hegemony to global hegemony. And they're steering into that direction. And this is happening at the same time. And what this means is that overall, major powers are not thinking about small countries, and they're drawing the lines for spheres of influence. And this is great power politics. And the soil is being prepared for this. The ground is being prepared for this. And I am concerned about this. And RBIO, revisionism, and the major power competition, great power competition, is far better than great power politics. That is how I feel. In Helsinki, I talked about this with President Stubb, and he said that Helsinki more than Yalta, and that is what he said. The Yalta dialogue made Finland suffered. In 1975, they had to go back to the 1975 Helsinki spirit. The Attison line, and when you look this up on the internet, South Korea's media has a lot of the second Attison line on it. It's not just Europe, in East Asia as well. The alliance dilemma, the Mr. concern, that they are concerned that they'll be abandoned. And so to alliance countries, we need to strengthen reassurance. And also on our part, within the context of great power competition, we should play a greater role. And by so doing, for the United States to move to great power politics it should be prevented. We should keep United States anchored so that it doesn't flow into great power politics. And that is the thing that we should be doing at this moment.
Excellent, thank you. And Holmes, same question.
So I read the National Security Strategy twice, front and back. And the more I read it...
Doesn't take long. Yeah.
But the more I read it, the more I feel that it's written by different people.
ChatGPT, I think.
I was being polite.
Yes.
But at least ChatGPT is coherent, right? But the NSS document wasn't that coherent. What I'm trying to say is Trump may be saying one thing and does another, and that seems to be the norm. And that's very unfortunate. Allies and friends, it makes allies and friends very hard to read the tea leaves. And even before Trump 2.0, during Obama's era, he said the U.S. should pivot to Asia. Nothing was done, right? And when Trump 2.0 started, the U.S. seems to be getting closer with Russia, and then some cabinet members started saying, well, it's a grand strategy to get close with Russia so that we can counter China together, but nothing. So far, it remains a pie in the sky. So the thing is, Trump is going to meet with Xi in a few months. The Taiwanese are very nervous, and probably the Japanese as well. What does Trump mean when he says grand bargain, big deal? That what kind of big deal he's going to strike with China? And these are all the things that are it's not just in the back burner. We're thinking, strategizing, and how to prepare in advance of any unpredictability in the Trump administration. The deeds, all in all. It's the deeds that count, not about words. Trump may be saying, like I said, Trump may be saying one thing but does another, and what he does, what the U.S. has been doing so far, seems to be shooting from the hips, and that's also very worrisome. So to wrap up, before I wrap up, I want to say that whatever I say today can only represent myself, does not represent Taiwan Space Agency, which is a government-owned institution, and I do not represent the Taiwanese government either. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Very clear. Understood. Same for me. We have time for some questions. Please raise your hand and wait for the microphone. And a couple of things. Please tell us who you are. Please tell us which panelists you're directing your question to. And if you have a long speech, please put it in the form of a question, so it sounds like a question. Raise your voice at the end a little bit. And we'll start right here in the third row. Please wait for the microphone.
Thank you very much. My name is Umi Otsuka. I'm a chief priest of Yasukuni Jinja Shinto Shrine, but today, not as someone from the Shinto community, but as a former naval officer and ambassador to Djibouti. My question is to my former boss, Mr. Kono. And Excellency, I think people talk much about Western Hemisphere today, but I think the globe is completely intertwined, financially, trade or intelligence, whatever. And so I'm very positive about the future of the US-Japan alliance because there are lots of the elements that can be supplemented each other, and especially from Japan to the United States, given my experience in the intelligence community or ambassador to Africa. And but what would you think? What would you see, especially the influence over to the global south in terms of this alliance in the future?
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as I said, the military-to-military relationship between two countries are probably the best, and business-to-business or people-to-people relationship are quite good. The only concern is politics, what happens in the White House. So that, if that could be taken care of, I think the bilateral relationship in general is very good. But we have to realize that U.S. has shouldered the burden to keep the peace and stability on this planet too much, too long. And we all have to share the burden, not equally, but we'll probably have to share more than before. And we need the will to do that. And we also need to create the institution to do that. So probably we really need to discuss how we're going to amend Article 9 of our Constitution so that we can play more role in politics, more role in security. And that's something we really need to talk about. We just cannot say the way it is the way forward. I think in way forward, we need to change ourselves as well.
Do you think that there will be a push to revise the Constitution, and do you think it will be successful?
Well, I think the majority of the general public would support change in Article 9, but how much are we going to do? What kind of role Japan should play with what institution? Like the United Nations is quite dead for many years to come. And I'm just hoping NATO, after Ukraine, would change itself into a global institution to defend the common value on this planet. And if Japan could play some kind of role with NATO, I think that would be the best.
Interesting. Thank you. Next question right here. Please wait for the microphone. Can we please have the microphone? There we go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Régis Arnaud. I'm correspondent for Le Figaro. I'm neither American nor Japanese, hence maybe my question. Perhaps to Mr. Kono. You said you were disappointed by Congress, I guess lack of resistance, but when Trump came to Japan and said, I'm going to tax you and ask you for $550 billion, which is 10 years of defense budget, the word resistance does not come to mind. Japan really answered the demand of Trump, pretty much what Trump wanted. And I have in front of me, I had a university professor tell me, in this relation of US-Japan, Japan is not empty-handed, and it could do what Korea did, or Brazil did, or India did, and could say to the US side, if you want to leave Okinawa, the line of defense of the US will now be Hawaii. So you should think about what you do when you ask us to do all what you want. Don't you think at some point the opportunity cost of the US-Japan relation may be endangered by what Trump says, but also by the lack of a strong response from Japan? Once I had the opportunity to ask Ishiba-san the cost of the alliance. He said it's still a very good bargain for Japan. So he explained that. Well, what do you think of this opportunity cost?
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Those $550 billion, yes, but we haven't paid a cent yet. And Trump term is only left for 3 more years, right? And if U.S. leave Okinawa, the defense line will fall back to Hawaii. Trump may like it. That's what we are afraid of. So we want U.S. to be committed to East Asia. And it's a one-man show. So if we could trick him into believing what we said, that's fine.
General Yoshida, do you have a thought about that? Should the Japanese government take a tougher stance against the Trump administration? And
now, to make a request from the military point of view to the political community, I would like to refrain from making that request. But I have listened carefully with interest to your question. For our alliance, what is the benefit for the United States? And we need to be aware of this. And between Japan and the United States, we should introduce that element in our negotiation because it was lacking and missing up until now. So we should assert more on this. But having said so, I believe that in the 2010s, to the United States, Japan has actually taken the leadership in our bilateral alliance in terms of policy. For example, under Abe cabinet, the diamond vision has been expanded to the Quad, Japan, US, Australia, India, the dialogue, and the free and open Indo-Pacific concept. It has led to change of the Pacific Command of the United States into Indo-Pacific Command. And in the military sense, the Nansei Islands presence and the footprint has been expanded and extended. That started from the Defense Charter in the 2010. And the United States would like to exploit this more. And for the counter-strike capability and the standoff defense capability, Japan has taken the initiative on these fronts, and having done so, the INF, the gap between US and China, will be filled in. And in March last year, the joint DSF, the Joint Operation Command, that JJOC was created newly in Japan. And the U.S. has started its realignment of the U.S. forces in Japan. So from politically perspective and from military perspective, from the 2010s, Japan has actually taken the leadership in our bilateral relations. And that is my view. And the reason for this is for the global terrorism that the United States has been shifting to U.S.-China, the confrontation. It took 10 long years. The global economic the breakdown in 1989. It took years to correct this, but we have actually changed and transformed ourselves. But for the United States, to shift to U.S.-China strategic cooperation to strategic the confrontation. It took 10 years, and Japan has actually filled in the gap. Japan has taken the leadership vis-a-vis China. And with the situation today that Japan needs to held on to the United States to stay in Asia, and Japan should continue to take the leadership in this regard.
ありがとうございます。ホームズさんお答えになりたいと思いますが、ちょっとひねりを加えて、台湾は同じようなジレンマに直面しています。アメリカの外交政策に依存しているし、台湾は影響力を持っております。半導体のエコシステムの中心ですから、特別なその重要性を持っています。アメリカにとって、これはその脆弱性でもあり得るし、影響力でもあり得ると思うんですが、台湾はその戦略的な状況をどう管理したらいいと思いますか。ありがとうございます。 半導体はその諸刃の剣剣でありまして、その台湾のその友好国、その同盟国に対する価値は引き上げるわけですけれども、アメリカの視点から言えばデリスキングをしたい半導体についてですね、そういうことでアリゾナがあり、ドレスデンの工場、そして、日本の南部にも工場があります。トランプの政権が最近発表したのは TSMC が、投資をアメリカで増やすと、生産も引き上げるということを言っています。でその諸刃の剣という場合、その台湾はその中国にとって非常に魅力的なそのターゲットになるわけです。で注意しないとアメリカがその AI の競争に負けるかもしれない。半導体、特にGPU、TPU の時代においては岩盤なんですね、その AI の、そして AGI の岩盤でもあるわけです。で軍備競争、アメリカ、中国間のそれからその過去においてはソ連ともあったわけですけれども、これはその兵器のシステムに関するものだったわけですけれども、将来は AI の軍備競争になるわけです。だから中国があらゆることをしてその輸入する、盗む、ということでテクノロジーをその取ろうとする EDS ばかりでない半導体の工場の装置、そして人材もそうです、獲得しようとしていると。その台湾はそのフリーライドはしたくない、そのこの地域の平和に貢献をしたいわけです。その半導体の影響力を持って、友好国、同盟国に対して説得したい、台湾の防衛安全保障をもっと見てくださいと言いたいのです。ありがとうございました。
この議論に続いて本当に安心感を覚えるとともに警戒感も覚えています。と言いますのも、どれだけの規模範囲にわたって課題が散見しているのかを考えると心配になります。一方で、研究所ですとか国際文化会館をはじめ、ここにいらっしゃる皆様、そしてステージ上のリーダーの方々が日々努力して課題に対処されているということで安心感を覚えます。パネリストの皆さん、ありがとうございました。拍手をお送りください。パネリストの皆様、そしてモデレーターに感謝を申し上げます。非常に時宜にかなった素晴らしいディスカッションをしていただきました。